Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's Feb 3, 2023. How's that? 2323. Yikes. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. And Drino for introducing me to our guest today is Link Phillips. Where in the heck are you calling in from, Link?
Calling in from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
That is so cool. The first question, Link, is
It's literally cool.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Well, I think it's cool because it's where Marshall McLuhan was raised partly. So, anyways, the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably proper nutrition, especially from an early age, because it sets us up for everything that follows in life, and actually applies to everybody. And there's very little else that does.
Applies to everybody. Really good. I rarely get that, and it's so evident. What's your
Mm.
favorite form? I agree with you. Proper nutrition, boy. That reminds me when health food became a fad in the 60s, we told my dad, don't eat that. It's got preservatives. He said, I need all the preservatives I can get.
Yeah.
What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Huh. Uh, I always think of Gregory Batesman, who defined information as the difference that makes a difference.
Oh, wow.
So I'm on the web. I read the newspaper. Talk to people. You kind of never know which of it is going to make a difference, but just try to be aware, I guess.
It's really good. But a divert, did you become a reader because your parents told you to? They did it as an example or on your own?
Uh, well, sort of my sister. I think I read all my sister's Nancy Drew mysteries or something. When I was young, I loved reading. Not my parents; they were way too busy. We had 5 kids in our family, so they were too busy to actually read. But I read quite a bit as a kid and still do.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
We're looking for an advantage.
Wow.
We live under what I think is an illusion that more information will help us in our life journey.
Looking for an advantage. That is good. Yeah. So is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate.
Yeah.
Uh, as human beings navigating this conundrum of life, I guess we're just trying to find a way through.
Yeah.
So,
Do thoughts create emotions?
yeah. First of all, I have trouble with the cause and effect
Yeah.
form of argument. It seems to me that if that's true, then that cause uh, must be the effect of another cause, and not the effect of another cause back to the Big Bang and beyond. And I think, frankly, that is how these things just arise in the flow of existence in our particular presentation.
Yeah. It's really good, Ling. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Think it.
Think it. Yeah, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yeah.
And Chomsky says an interesting thing that Oh, no, I forgot this one. Sorry. Back up. Can humans think without language?
Uh, no, uh, like thinking needs an object. And when you say language, I mean the whole kind of input that comes to us from people's words, their body language, their attitude, everything. So it's not word language, but thinking needs. You can't think about nothing, so it needs something.
Wow. Yeah, because Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a
Mm,
unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
yeah,
Link, what do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
it kind of always breaks down. Right? Like it has to be reconstructed in every situation. Like you and I can speak with each other because we're kind of a vaguely similar age. We've grown up in a kind of a similar time, so
Yeah,
we have a set of uh, symbols, words, whatever that we understand or more or less understand. Uh, Not always that clearly. So I think in any attempt to converse, we need to reconstruct it in a way that makes sense to us. Right?
that's good. Reconstruct. I like those words. So your
Well,
observation, go ahead.
no, I'm done.
Okay. Um, it's a stupid question. I know it's both and it depends, but your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Feeling,
Yeah.
feeling. Thinking is reactive. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, Feeling is the immediate.
Yeah. Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by soul, really. Like
Yeah.
our life, our thinking is a part of us, so it is, I guess, a part of the soul.
Yeah. Second one is, can machines think?
I would say not quite yet, and no.
Yeah.
I would say not quite yet because they'll be able to think when when we redefine thinking as that which a computer does, but
Exactly.
uh, it can't think like us. That'll
Yeah.
never happen, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I
I
think,
like
think we think that I think what happened was years ago when computers first started, some wag sort of looked at this and said, "Hey, it's just like a brain. We can, we put things in, we get stuff out. It's got a memory. This is great." So we sort of went from that to this notion that the computer itself can think, but thinking is not confined to the brain. Feeling is not confined to the brain.
yeah.
It's it exists in the flow of life.
Yeah.
It's not altogether personal. So
Yeah, like Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I'm like, good luck. How can you shut your brain off? You're doing the most sensuous thing practically a human can do, but it's sort of like meditating. They go, think about not thinking.
yeah, well, I agree with Bridget. I think uh,
Yeah.
when you're making love, you're not there.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Again, neither. Both of those things arise, whether you look for them or not. So I just let them happen.
Great. Okay. So, again, a couple of these more in questions, but you're answering them great. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Well, it's certainly bubbling away, like consciousness is everywhere, and we're a part of it.
Yeah.
I think our thoughts about it are mostly wrong, but nevertheless, it does occur to us that it's existing. Like we have a notion that we're alive. You know, we have this tingling notion of reality, and I think consciousness is embedded in that.
Yeah, I like tingling notion. It reminds me, Lily Tomlin says reality's just a collective hunch.
Hmm.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Well, I guess speed of light, since nothing can go faster. But you know, thought is in a different realm, really, from physical speed, since it can create its own reality and work within it at whatever speed it wishes, really.
That's good. Thought can create its own reality. Light can't create its own reality. It is just there.
Yeah.
It's like it can't control itself. That's pretty good. Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Why do we want to dismantle the master's house?
It's very good. You're answering a question with the question, Link. You win. That's what this series is all about. But you know, it's sort of go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I would say if it's necessary to do that, I would say compassion and cunning.
That's great. Compassion and kindness.
Cunning.
Oh,
Cunning.
cunning.
Yeah.
Compassion and cunning. What's another word for cunning?
Well, to me, it means using your wits, you know, to
Oh, use wits. Yeah.
get on with it.
What new toy do you suggest?
Toy. Uh, when I was a kid, I somehow came across, I think this is a Mexican thing. It's like a barrel on the end of a string tied to a stick. And the idea is you using the stick, you flip the barrel over and catch it on the stick. And for some reason that fascinated me. So I made one and tried for weeks and weeks and weeks to get this to work. And finally I got it where I could do it, flip this thing up. Kind of one of those things. But
I love
the other toy that I've enjoyed a lot is the aerobie. I don't know if you know about the aerobie.
What is it?
It's a ring frisbee. So it's essentially a wing. And you can, I think the world record is for throwing this thing is something like 400 yards. I could never do that, but a friend of mine and I once snuck into our local football stadium, and we could throw that aerobie from one end of the field to the other after trying for a long time. Took a bit to catch on to it, but
You mean it's a frisbee with no center, so it's actually a ring.
that's
Oh yeah,
and
I've
it's
thrown those.
and
Yeah.
it's shaped like a wing, so it actually has lift.
Wow. It's good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
What I'm going to do when I wake up in the morning, I guess.
That's
But
cool.
I make art every day, and I often, falling asleep, get notions about what I might do the next day. sometimes they're with me still in the morning, sometimes not.
Wow. So you anticipated this. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might be able to like about the inventions. So, Link, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, partly because they're hidden, and
Yeah.
it takes a certain kind of person. Like, I think everybody is an antenna. It's
Yeah.
that artists have an ability to access it and express it, because we're all feeling life to some degree. Marshall also said we spend a lot of our time sort of hiding from the present.
Yeah. Yeah, we hide from the present. That's good. In rear view mirrorism. And so that's interesting because the next question is, do artists have moral obligation?
Yes, to their own morality.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe there is a common morality.
Yeah.
When we look at the mass of humanity, people seem to be capable of anything.
Yep.
And somebody else calls it immoral, but to them it's not. So I don't know. But I think an artist has to be true to their own morality.
Yeah. I agree. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Well, they're all new. Okay? When they come to you, it's new. I'm not necessarily afraid of ideas. I think anything can be considered in your particular case. Yeah, I'm not afraid of ideas, old or new.
It's good. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yeah, one of my really early memories, not a nice memory actually, was our cat being killed by a dog outside our window in the backyard when I was very young.
Wow.
Yeah, funny how
Is Go ahead.
just the things that stick with us, in life.
Oh, it's hilarious. I mean, it's so weird. What does stick with? Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, we don't know what memory is. Okay? We've tried to sort of locate memory in the brain, and we can't do it. And it seems like memory is constructed in the moment almost. So it's hard to know what memory is. I know some time back I was telling somebody a story about some experience that I had had, and the thought just slapped into my mind: is this real? Like, did I really do this, or am I just kind of making this up? I mean, not in whole cloth, but in some sense. And so I don't know.
I've done that. It's like you think you remember something and then something says, "No, that was not what happened." And I'm like, "What?" I
Yeah.
swear. I mean, um tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Mm. I'm the second of five kids. And my older sister has always been kind of a mentor to me, and she was the one that got me to read. She was the one that we would laugh and goof around with all. Outside my family, I had a basketball coach in high school that was the sort of first adult that kind of treated me like an actual person. And that has always stuck with me.
How cool is that?
I was not a good basketball player, by the way.
But of all, I mean, that he treated you that way, that's super cool. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yeah, my parents were active in what in Canada is called the United Church. I think it's kind of Presbyterian maybe in the States, but certainly Protestant. They, sang in the choir and were active in the church.
Do you pray?
I was not.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No,
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I can't answer that, Jerry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Yeah, I don't think evil is a separate force in life. I think people do what I consider evil things, but mostly I think they do them sort of innocently in their own life. So I mean, evil, it exists. It's certainly a part of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the answer I get a lot is we're all capable of evil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I set up with a few modern thinkers. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts linked. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I mean, it depends on who the enemy is. I think you should, although I love Alan Watts, I think you have to acknowledge that enemy is there.
Yeah.
It might present a physical danger to you, might present a psychological danger to you. I don't know, but I guess I'd like to know who my enemies are.
And then what's an approach you would find useful? Once you know who your enemy is there any sort of strategy that you guide yourself by? Or
Well, again, I think I would say compassion and cunning.
that is so good.
Is the only way through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that compassion and cunning from? The way your parents raised you, on your own, or somewhere else? Where do you think you got that?
Well, from my experience, I think trying to deal with difficult people.
Yeah. Yeah, Nassim Taleb says games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. I told someone this and they said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And you brought up Bateson. He says, like, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, wow, I did something morally or socially wrong? So any thoughts on those various lines? But more so, the question is, does punishment work?
No. it really just creates another environment that has to be navigated, I think. But we believe it works, but in my experience, never.
Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
That's a very good question. Uh, the Joyce's saga with the movie theater in Dublin is a sort of an exercise in futility. He was a terrible businessman.
Yeah.
He somehow got that idea because he saw a film for the first time and decided that this had to be inflicted upon the Irish population, and had a partner. I can't remember who his partner was. They rushed off to Dublin. They hired a hall and got seats and all of that. But the only pictures available were these sort of Italian melodramas that the Irish people had no use for at all. So it was a hopeless failure, but one of several that he undertook in his life.
That is good background. I'm glad you told me all that. I didn't know.
It is interesting, sort of why we need to create facsimiles of life.
Yeah.
I guess this goes back to the information thing. It seems like if we watch somebody successfully navigating a situation, that would be useful to us in that same sort of situation. But I think that's rarely the case, and usually winds up just making us feel worse that we're not as good as that situation.
That's a question I don't ask much, but do movies create false expectations?
Yeah, yeah.
Does
I would like to be as smooth as Brad Pitt or George, what's his name?
yeah.
But I'm not, So
Does literature create false expectations?
I think the same.
Yeah, same. Amazing.
Like that's to me, that's the genius of Joyce, that he did not write a story. He wrote a feeling of life. So he takes away the ability to identify with the characters. Like in normal fiction, the hero of the story knows everything, responds appropriately to all situations, and that's not real. That's not how our life works.
Yeah.
We stumble along through it.
Yeah, stumble wrong. That's good verb. So Link, tell me sort of the tipping point. I mean, your older sister's sort of getting you to read.
Mm-hmm.
Then what's the tipping point where you're going, well, I can do this, I can write?
Yeah, I'm probably college. In college, I did get some positive feedback from professors that what I was writing had some quality, and that kind of lured me on to do some more of it. It's not something I do much anymore, but I did for quite a while. I wrote commercials, television commercials for a while. Wrote some TV shows for a while, which is quite different from sort of fiction or actual literature, but it's something I find very difficult. It's hard work for me to do.
And then pursuing two other things I'm interested in is you're a photographer too, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the tipping point where you say, oh, I can do that?
I worked as a TV cameraman. Uh, and it was something I loved. It was something I loved to do. I probably should have stayed there. I might have had a happier life. I don't know. Uh, I I found that after doing that for a while, I would frame everything. I would look at any situation and I would adjust myself slightly to make sure that it was in a, a good ratio of background to foreground or up and down, whatever. And I, bought a camera much later in life, and I spent a long time taking pictures of everything imaginable. Something I like to do. Don't do so much anymore. I'm more abstract now, I think, in my work.
And when you say work and you say you're an art maker,
Yeah,
what's your main medium now?
a computer. It's all computer. Adobe, Illustrator, Photoshop.
But you take the photograph and then Photoshop it, or you just make art on the computer?
Just make art on. I mean, I did a whole really quite years long series of photographs combined with some forms that were devised in the computer to kind of mash the two together in some way. Uh, I sort of grew out of that, I guess, at some point, and now I just do the. Usually, I design something in Illustrator and then pull it into Photoshop and mess with it there.
So would you call that a computer painting?
Yeah, I guess using the computer as your brush,
Yeah.
using the computer as your paint. It's not quite like painting. It doesn't have hard to obtain the same subtlety that paint can evoke. But you can get kind of close, I think, sometimes when you're right. So,
Right. Well, and then before we go into Joyce, let's stay on photography for a second because you used the word frame. I'm always interested in how did you what informed your framing aesthetic? You know how camera people do this?
mhm.
You said words like the ratio of foreground and background. What's the roots of how you formed that?
I have no idea. I think it's something that I was good at. Like a photograph. It's not just the foreground. It's the background, the depth of field, where something sits in that field. Like I look at you, I can see the background behind you, what's going on. Seems kind of there's something interesting back there that I kind of like to look at. But I like the ability of photography to capture a moment.
Yeah,
That's I mean, and that's its weakness as well because then it's stuck.
yeah,
But when you're taking the picture, it has that immediacy.
yeah, yeah. Bruce Bailey, the experimental filmmaker, I said, "How'd you form your framing aesthetic?" Because his is like more like Robert Frank. It's a little not traditional.
Mhm.
As well, I'll tell you what Jean Cocteau said. I formed my framing aesthetic by the way they put the knife and fork on the table. you know and I mean, what else did we form our framing aesthetics from was previous photographs and paintings.
Yeah,
I mean, like what caused Robert Frank to start going like this, and
yeah,
not doing the traditional framing. So
yeah. I know. When I was a camera director, basically in television, I was constantly trying to get the cameraman to fill the frame with the person. Not so
yeah,
much. They all wanted to give this big headroom, and I think almost no headroom can be very useful.
yeah,
If you get like that, you pop forward.
yeah, you mean like this?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
with the head obscured, it makes you want to pull the person forward, so
yeah,
they sort of come out of the frame in a
yeah,
way.
yeah, very interesting. So then what, I'm a bookstore freak. I love bookstores and libraries.
Yeah.
Then you spent, just a quick divert, what was the tipping point to go into the bookstore business? How was that? Was it fun? And what caused that to happen?
Well, it was there was four of us in the beginning, and we were sitting around one day. I was working in television at the time, but the other three I don't think had jobs at all. So we were thinking, well, let's do something. Let's get involved in something. And we were all meditators of one kind or another, involved in different kind of spiritual, quote unquote, endeavors. And we knew that there had been in Winnipeg before us two different kind of nonfiction bookstores. We knew the people involved, and we knew that in both cases they didn't go broke for lack of customers. They just got tired of doing it and quit. So we thought, well, there's a niche that we might be able to fill. So we found an old drugstore that was being used as a warehouse for hospital equipment, and found the owner and haggled with him for a little while and got the place and fixed it up. And we had no money or very little money, and for the first 6 or 8 months, we'd sit outside and play guitar and fool around. After 3 or 4 years, it turned into a viable business. But we had the advantage of having no experience and no money, so we couldn't make a big mistake. And eventually, it turned into a good, viable business that it still exists to this day. It's good.
How cool. And so, before we go into James Joyce, a screenwriting teacher told me great art, great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker.
Hmm.
Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're making your current design Adobe pieces, what role does intention play in your creative process?
I like that it has both a surface and a depth. That people can, if they're able, get the depth. Uh, Maybe it's not always there for everybody, even, but it seems to me that art has to emerge for people. Yeah.
And then you almost answered it, but Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer when you're making your design?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I make art for myself. I don't have to ask anyone's permission. Uh, I can do whatever I want, and that's what I do. If that's interesting to someone else, I'm pleased, but I don't work to achieve that.
And McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. Even non-tangible, maybe philosophy or religion extends our consciousness. What humanness or human sensorium does the Adobe computer play or, extend for you?
I think really, our sense of light and shadow, color,
Yeah.
movement. Uh, where I live now is only 2 blocks from where McLuhan grew up.
Yeah. How cool. So then what's your tipping point in getting into Joyce? Did they pre-college, high school, and then
No, no.
yeah, just walk me through the history of getting to the wake, in the Joyce world.
Yeah, well, it was Marshall McLuhan that enticed me after sort of rummaging through his stuff for quite a few years.
In college or post-college?
Uh, a bit in college, a lot post, I think. Um,
But
yeah.
you mean you're actually meeting Marshall or just reading his books and articles?
Oh, reading books and articles.
And
Uh,
he brings up Joyce.
he kept talking about Joyce, and I thought, well, I'm going to read that book. So I bought the book, picked it up, I read the first page, and I thought, no, there's no way that I can read this. So I put it down. I came back to it a few years later. Said, okay, now I'm going to read it. So I read it. I got 2 pages. I thought, I can't read this. It's absolute
you're
garbage.
you're wait, hold on, Link. You're saying specifically Finnegan's Wake. You didn't really do previous Joyce.
I might have read Dubliners, maybe Portrait of the Artist. I can't remember. I don't think so.
A little, but this was McLuhan was saying, got to read the Wake. So
Yeah,
you dove into the Wake twice. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah. Uh, so maybe the third or perhaps even the fourth time I started to read it, and I was about to put it down, and something in me said, no, you're going to read this damn thing if it kills you. So I just plowed through the book. And with the Wake, you'll stumble along through the mud, and then you'll come across this beautiful lyrical passage. And you think, okay, now I'm getting it. This is great. And then wham, you're sort of back in the mud, sort of going along again. But it was kind of like golf, the sort of one good shot sort of lures you on to try it again. And I sort of came to see that it was not a book for single voice. It's
Yeah.
it's multiple things going on there, and that encouraged me to try to sort of tease out the different voices that were happening in the book. And that's sort of the basis of the script that I made to try to identify the speaker, because it's all speech. The whole book is in the present tense as a speaker. And I don't know if I got it all right. I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't and don't. I still work on it really every day, pretty much, for a little bit. As long as I can take it. But and then I sort of encouraged a few other people to try to read it with me, and some came and lasted one time, some a little longer, and some faded away, and others came. And so this last group, there's 6 of us who have been together now, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I think really that's the milieu that the Wake lives in a group of people reading it aloud together, and playing with it as you go.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
I've
I
done,
think I think it's one of the most remarkable works
yeah.
of art ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's unbelievable. I've done it for 25 years, once a month.
Yeah,
And this was in a library with other people.
yeah,
Um, and then Zoom has just revolutionized the Wake for me because it's so much better in a Zoom situation. People don't like to hear that, but you're more present, you're seeing their face, that's where your voice comes out of, blah blah blah. So that's how we met, in fact,
yeah,
through Peter Quadrino's
yeah,
Austin, Texas
yeah.
reading group. But let's go back to this. Did you were you because T.S. Eliot started the first Finnegan's Wake reading club in 47 in New York, and there's like 50 of these reading clubs across the world.
Yeah.
Were you aware of Finnegan's Wake reading clubs and reading the Wake out loud when did you come aware of that? I mean, you're saying I tried it once, I read one page. Were you reading that one page out loud, or you were reading it like a normal book to yourself?
Yeah. No, again, that comes from Marshall McLuhan. He talked about reading it every morning with his son, reading it out loud. And I mean, really, when you do it, you realize that that's the way to do it. The sound of the book is
Yeah.
thrilling in a way, and also it teases your brain tongue continuum. You know, how to actually say those new words in a way that can make any kind of sense.
Yeah, I mean, the miracle for me is you figure these other people in this reading group, they're literate and they know how to, like I say, pronunciate words properly because they got good educations like I did. But the phenomenon is you like, I wouldn't have pronounced that syllable that way.
Yeah,
And then someone else pronounces it a different way. And
yeah,
it enriches the experience because you're set in your head, but you're forced to
yeah,
hear
yeah,
words in a book other than in your mind's eye or your mind's head, mind's eye, I guess is what you're saying.
yeah.
But what do you call your group in Winnipeg? Is there a name for it?
No, not really.
It's
Uh,
just the Winnipeg Wake Group.
I guess. Yeah, yeah.
And so
We don't have a name for it.
WWG. So for 6 years, for 5 years, you've met in person.
Yeah,
And then through COVID, you remained in person or you went to Zoom?
we went to Zoom. Yeah,
And now you're back in person or you stayed on Zoom?
we're back in person, but one of our members has moved to Montreal, so we set up a computer and connect with him over Zoom. So he
So it's mixed. Yeah. They
mixed,
call it whatever.
mixed.
What do they call it? Hybrid or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Link, how much do you think, and I know it's a stupid question, but just how much do you think you get the way? Because what you just explained to me, it teases the brain's continuum is the epitome of what the wake is. But in general, you put the question in the context you want. How much of the wake do you get and how much of the wake did Joyce get? Like 0 to 100%, just sort of a general guess.
Well, I read that Joyce said at one point that he could justify every word in the book. So
And you,
I do believe that he knew what he was doing.
yeah,
When you look at Joyce's time, it was a time when people were flipping, as McLuhan would say, into the world of the ear, away from the world of the eye. So it was an inclusive thing that didn't involve thought, really. It was just an emotion. And Joyce's problem, of course, is he was working with words that immediately invoke the things that we know or think we know. So he had to put it in a way that would chase us out of our tendency to make a pattern of this and to deny our ability to make a pattern of it. And so to create a simulacrum of life, we don't understand very much about what goes on around us, and we just ignore it, because too difficult. A car drives by on the street. Who's in it? We don't know. What are they doing? We don't know. Who built this building that I'm in? I don't know. But we just carry on, because it's too difficult. And I think Joyce was trying in some ways to be an abstract painter using words, and a musician, because he was a very strong, had a musical sense, and you can often get sort of wonderful kind of musical, lyrical passages out of the work and not really understand what it is you're saying. But to me, that's part of the fun. Like often I'll be walking down the street and some phrase will pop into my mind and say, oh, that's what he meant. Just from nowhere. Yeah.
My friend Peter, forgot, he was a post-abstract painter in New York, got famous with Museum of Modern Art, blah, blah, blah. And then he sort of retired to Bisbee, Arizona.
Mhm.
and turn it into an art town. And he said he had a friend who read The Wake in New York City, and walking down the street, and then after he read a page, he would tear the page out and throw it into the street. which which to me is the ultimate way for The Wake, because then some person might pick up that page. There's no indication that it was written by James Joyce or it's from Finnegan's Wake. It's just this page of gobbledygook, and they would look at it and go, what the, and it could change their life, you know.
Yeah.
And then my other favorite was Phil Solomon, the great experimental filmmaker. He used to be a projectionist in Boston, and he would read The Wake and he would get so pissed he would take the book and throw it against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are what that book should be doing, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not having people trying to decipher it and make enough money to buy a BMW, or, you know, like the Joyce industry.
Yeah. There's an awful lot written about the book.
Yeah.
And I think people read more about the book than actually read the book. My,
Yeah.
my joke is, in order to read the book, you have to take the course. And the course consists of reading the book, because
That's it.
nothing that you read about it will help.
Yeah.
It's such a strange phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's inevitable. I don't know if you go through this, but I discovered it more in the Austin group,
Mhm.
because now I'm in 4. I'm in Austin, Venice, Sweeney's in New York.
Oh,
The Austin group, I always find we start, you know, deciphering the one page, you know, word by word.
mhm.
And then eventually we get into poo poo caca, you know, and sex things.
Yeah,
And then eventually we settle into, why did he do this?
yeah, yeah. Like
And
the
that's why the Sweeney's group really is my favorite, because all we do is read for an hour,
yeah,
and then we have casual conversation.
yeah. We do.
And I mean that I mean, how do you guys do it? And it has your procedure changed?
No, that's basically what we do. Like, there's a musician, a massage therapist, almost 90-year-old woman, a teacher, a carpenter, and we all bring to it what we have. So, every so often something will pop up that somebody knows something about, and they'll mention that, and we'll carry on. But mostly we're reading it for the sound of the thing
Yeah.
and the fun, because we do laugh a lot and get a kick out of his sort of amazing puns and the way he puts things. So
The pun is the key. But yeah, I'll tell you the line that just floors me. Marcia McLuhan says that Joyce used the pun as a way of seeing the paradoxical exuberance of being through language.
yeah,
I mean, that sentence is just so packed.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but the what's your length? Do you have a 2 hour, 3 hour, 1 hour? I mean, what's your length generally?
Yeah, usually an hour and a bit, hour and a half maybe.
Hour and a half. So you read for an hour and then talk for a half hour, or
Yeah, or sometimes read for an hour and a half. It depends.
yeah,
We uh, using this script, people are not usually reading very long at one time. Kind of depends. The book has a lot of different spots to it, but uh, we'll read along, and if the page is going on, he has sentences that go on for pages, and
yeah,
it's just too much, so they'll just pass in the middle of the page. Someone else will carry on. Like the people in the Austin group are very educated people.
yeah,
Uh, they know a
yeah,
lot more than I do. That's for sure.
yeah. No, they're lit people and professors,
Yeah.
but it is fun. You brought up laughter. Gurdjieff says laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no.
Mm.
What's the function of laughter?
Yeah, it's a burst of something, eh? Like McLuhan says, the jokes are always based on grievance, and I guess it's it's understanding. When you finally understand something, there's a joy in that kind of bursts out.
Well, you must have ESP, because I was just going to ask you what you think of that Joyce quoting Steve Allen, behind every joke, there's a grievance. But
Yeah,
I like that burst of something. It's almost like a not knowing
yeah,
that we put into knowing. We sort of, I love to laugh at a joke that I don't get, because I'm
yeah.
just, I know that there's something going on here that's going to make me laugh. So I just laugh.
I
It,
I I worked for a while in community television here.
yeah,
One of the shows we did was called the Jewish Television Hour,
yeah.
and the host was a man who had published a Yiddish newspaper here in Winnipeg, and he used to tell jokes in Yiddish that would have me on the floor laughing, and I had no idea what he was talking about. He could
Oh,
just deliver that joke in such a way that you knew it was funny, whatever.
that is great. And let's just contemporize it, Ling. We've had this slew of, news now. People get their news from Colbert. And I mean, we got it from That Was the Week That Was, and then Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
So does satire news more pacify or more activate people?
in a way, it pacifies people. That if we're laughing at it, we're probably not taking it seriously enough.
Yeah.
But it has to be there has to be an attachment, some sort of serious attachment for the satire to work. Otherwise, there's nothing there. But I think sometimes laughing, like this, especially at the current political situation, is unhelpful. Really, there's work to be done, and laughing at it doesn't help much.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect lead into, can satire be destructive? I asked my friend who wrote comedy for Robin Williams, and he said, that's the job of satire. But if me or you do a certain cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, some people might think dying is destructive. So Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own.
Hmm.
In fact, Frank Zappa has a great line: watch the Nazis run your town. Now go home and check yourself. You think we're singing about somebody else.
Yeah,
So, what's the function of satire?
I think to bring things into view that maybe are boring or uh, dangerous or in some other way, that we can bring them up and laugh about them. I guess in that way, that's a useful function of satire.
Yeah. What was the
I,
motive?
I like Joyce's pun. Instead of instruct me, he says unstrict me.
Oh, does he unstrict me?
Isn't that beautiful?
That is great. I don't know that. You know where that is?
I could find it, but no, I don't.
Okay, anyways, don't worry, because I the other one I love is let us pry.
Yeah, he's got
Or
a million of them. I assembled a book at one point that I called 111 quotes from Finnegan's Wake. And I realized that it's way more than 111, and someone else could write a whole different book with
yeah.
111 other quotes. It's endless, really. Just what
But
occurred.
you never published it.
No, I got it printed on Blurb or one of those things online just for myself.
Yeah. Well, that's Anthony Burgess is a shorter version of Finnegan's Wake. Actually, that introduction to that book is amazing. But it's like, why would you ever edit it down? That's stupid.
I think so too. I think it's an abomination. I have that book, but the Joyce said, you need to experience the whole of it. The quantity of quality he talks about at some point, and unless it's too long, unless you're desperate, for something at the end, then it's not working somehow.
Yeah.
There's a great story. I don't know if you know of the book Wake Rights, written by a man named Gibson.
Yeah.
He was a student of pre-Christian Ireland, a historian, and he took a sabbatical of some kind. He was going to read Finnegan's Wake, and he read and read and read, and at some point he just had to throw the book down. He couldn't stand it anymore, and reached for a book on his shelf that happened to be about Druid Ireland, and realized that there was Finnegan's Wake, kind of based in that time and place in Ireland. It's incredible, really, the range that he has.
Oh, that's one of Peter's favorite book, Wake Rights. Yeah, I should get that. I know. So, what was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch?
I think they were making totems, right? By painting that bull on the wall. They were kind of capturing it in some way, understanding it in some way, because that was life to them, really.
Yeah, that's life. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Neither. They're both absolutes.
Wow, neither. I never get that answer. Neither. That is good.
I try to avoid absolutes if I can.
That's the first aphorism I thought I ever made up was the only absolute is that there are no absolutes.
Yeah.
But I think someone said that.
I mean, and the other thing is both of those can be useful in some situation. It's when we cling to them that the problem arises, I think.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Linkese.
Linkies. I'm making a film today about Finneganese, which is funny because you love, words evoke more in their meaning. So ease is a verb, like to be calm, or how do you describe the verb ease? Like to be settled or chill out?
Yeah, kind of comfortable.
Comfort. But then linkese is meaning it's a ESE. What does it mean? A form of a language or a?
Yeah, it's my language. It's the stuff that I use. It's not.
Yeah.
It's particular to me and not even useful to anyone else.
Well, that's one of our readers in the Wake, probably 23 years ago, said, "Oh, I get what the Wake is. It's like that secret language you develop with your friend or your brothers or sisters when you're a kid, so you can say things and your parents can't understand what you're saying."
Yeah.
You're like talking in.
But of course, with Joyce, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
In the midst of reading a sentence, you're in medieval Ireland. Then you're in the First World War. Then you're doing something in Argentina. Then it's something about Africa. The whole of life comes kind of rushing at you in a way that it's not a pattern that can really be understood in the way that pattern is understood. It's a kind of a gestalt of all of life.
It's a gestalt of all of life. That's really good. It reminds me too. Have you ever read that Borges short story, The Allah?
No.
And well, the guy goes, he says, you got to come into my basement. And he takes him down to his basement. He says, here, sit right here and look at this little spot. And he sees everything that ever happened or will happen. Like, you know, I just, the guy's staring at the wake.
Yeah.
No, he's staring at a wake reading group.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
So two of my film heroes have these mantras. George Manupelli, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says, there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
Yeah, well, we get hung up on the self, as being something important, and it's not. Existence is. We're a part of that, and I think when art gets entangled with yourself, it kind of ceases being art, really. Yeah.
That's good. And so, can art making be egoless?
Has to be.
Has to be. Wow.
If it's driven by the ego, it's just a job.
Really smart, Link. I appreciate this. Is perception reality?
No. No. Feeling is reality. I mean, when we perceive, we give it a name, and it's not the name. It's that, again, that kind of tingling feeling of existence. That's what the Buddha was on about. That we want to name everything and think that by naming it we understand it, but that's quite the opposite. By naming it we misunderstand it. But again, Joyce has a great line: "Who gave you that numb?" And I love that because our name obscures our essential being. So it's a numbing.
It's a numbing. That's that whole reinterpretation of the narcissism by McLuhan is amazing. Narcosis, narcissism is narcosis, numbing. So Marshall sort of broke the Finnegan's Wake code in a way by saying artists dream while they're awake. Everybody creates these scenarios in the night when they're sleeping, but artists can also, not to sound elitist, but artists also dream awake. Mm-hmm. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
Not significantly. I do kind of dream awake. I'm kind of capable of that. When I'm working, I'm not following a real plan necessarily. I'd start somewhere, and it leads me off somewhere else. Sometimes completely different, sometimes a little, but it is a process of discovery as you go.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's got to do with dreams necessarily, but
well,
I'm not a big dreamer, I guess.
Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
It's all impossible to me.
Yeah, Sunrise said, the impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been, always had a kind of bafflement about life in general. And when I was young, I thought that was a flaw. Now I think it's perhaps an advantage.
Wow, you really anticipated this question, so I'll just shoot it up there. Flaw to advantage. I mean, maybe you can suss it out, but I'll ask it. Moshe Feldenkrais says, it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength,
Hmm.
rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Mhm.
Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, I mean, sort of going back to the wake, that I've always had a problem with uh, paying attention to something, you know, a very short attention span.
Yeah.
And of course, that's partly what defeated me trying to read the wake, and partly what I overcame in a way by sticking to it. So,
Exactly. That explains me all the way. I have no, whatever they call that, ADD or something. I can't even read. I grew up with the TV in front of my face. So then I run a reading club, and it's like the wake is like I I'm totally encaptured, but I'm reading Ulysses, and it's like it just doesn't do it for me. And I understand how important it is, and I have good people explaining it, but it just doesn't even get close to what the wake is. So
yeah,
it's sort of like that we're taught to specialize growing up, but if we're like comprehensivist and we're all over the place, we're scattered,
yeah.
that the wake is sort of like the perfect pill for that.
At one point, I thought, okay, well, I've done the wake. I'm going to do Ulysses in the same way. Couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
Amazing.
It's the wake is unique in its ability to inhabit the present tense. Like
Yeah.
most other forms of literature do not and cannot do that. I know people read, have reading groups and they read stuff aloud, but it's not the same as the wake.
No, it is not. Link, tell me one major element of your creativeness that's changed, in one major element that stayed the same in the many years you've been doing it. Just like an overall thing in all your creative pursuits.
Yeah. I've always had that urge to make stuff,
Yeah.
really from a very young age. I made toys. I made all kinds of things when I was growing up. I've made sculptures. I've made furniture. Always had that urge, and it's kind of flits from one thing to another. Uh, but that urge has always remained with me, and still to this day does. So I don't know that it's changed at all, really. I do find sometimes that it's remarkable how little I've changed or apparently changed.
Wow. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
And it's necessary, I guess. I'm not a fan of anger. I think most of the time it's destructive. But I
Yeah.
also imagine moments when it's very useful.
What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Whoa, there's a question.
Whoa.
First of all, I don't think you can separate the physical differences.
Yeah.
Uh, like women are life.
Yeah.
Men are an attachment.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're definitely different
Yeah.
in very fundamental ways. I mean, that's one of the things I think that's happening now, that the sort of ground of our psychological being has shifted under us. That's what McLuhan was trying to get across. And I think that ground is a ground that women are comfortable on and men are not so much.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has blown into a lot of cultural changes that we see around us.
Yeah. Amazing. What caused matriarchy?
the electric current. I mean,
Whoa.
the matriarch, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to answer this, but if we look back at the history of human beings, it was the woman who was tending the fire, cooking the food, raising the kids, cleaning the
Yeah.
home. The men were off hunting and goofing around out there, but it was women that were holding the thing together.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think we're getting back to that way of human life, really.
Yeah. Link, there's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
So it's basically your thoughts or reactions to this line. You create what you resist. And I'm not saying you, Link, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that?
I've found sometimes I'll look at something that I don't like very much, and then I'll find myself doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Later on. I don't know. Like these things are complex. Eh? We have this strange brew of likes and dislikes that sort of roil around in us. They arise and disappear in a flash, and sometimes we act on them, sometimes we don't. We don't really know why in either case. I think it's just life rolling with us.
Yeah. Can you forget to die?
Well, of course, we die every moment, eh? Really. Creation and destruction all happen simultaneously in the moment. I don't know, but forgetting to die, that's an odd way to put it. It sort of assumes that we can remember to die. And I'm not sure that's true either. Those things are out of our control completely.
Yeah. On what occasion do you lie?
Yeah, I try not to lie. I sort of lie when I'm trying to be polite with somebody. I don't
Yeah.
really want to confront something in them that I don't like or don't want to deal with, and I'll just be polite and nice about it to kind of get out of the situation.
Yeah.
Generally,
How do you find peace of mind?
there's no such thing. That's not the way the world works. Eh? It's
Yeah.
constantly changing, constantly, everywhere and always. And to try to stop that is, to me, folly.
Folly. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So I think perhaps peace of mind is recognizing that and going with it.
Wow. Like,
Go with the flow.
go with the flow. That's, who said, if the fool persist in their folly, they become wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's your take on those three words that Joyce uses somewhere? Because you used one of them, cunning. What's he say? Exile, something, and cunning.
Yeah, he was talking about what his strategy would be. Yeah, exile and cunning are the only two I remember. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can't even remember the other one. But anyways, you already sort of explained cunning. Anyways, back to Alan Watts. Here's 5 questions from Alan Watts, just off the top of your head in a few words. First one, who started it all?
There is no beginning.
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
I can't relate to that somehow. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, who's cleaning it up?
Nobody.
Is it serious?
Yes.
Wow. If you were, that's great on the Alan Watts. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Tie your shoes.
That's good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
Why?
Otherwise, it gets on the wall and can get contaminated. I don't know.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
A bumbler's journey. I don't know.
I like that. They want to scent the glue and the binding. What smell?
Patchouli.
Patchouli. That is, you know where I got that question from when Madonna released her book. She scented the glue with patchouli. So you went straight to the source of that question, dude. That was great.
Well, in our bookstore, we sold a lot of scents of all kinds, incense and oils and all of that. And patchouli always was one of the favorites.
Top seller, yeah. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Stone, and in the middle of the boreal forest somewhere.
Nice. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
That's a tough one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
That's all right. I'll tell you the answer I get the most. 3. Fame, money, and heroin.
Those are all good. Those are all good.
Yeah. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Now there's a situation where anger might be useful.
That's good. Go back to some previous question. Well, you might get a kick out of this. I asked this woman on the Venice Boardwalk once that question. She goes, I'd take the velocity of the bag of shit and use it to swoop my way out of the vat of vomit. And I said, that's descent into the maelstrom, which McLuhan talks about in his first book in the introduction, that we can use this sensory overload, and get out of it by using the same techniques they use to sensory overload us with.
Yeah.
What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Well, for sure, McLuhan's notion of this shift from the eye to the ear, to me, is absolutely central to what's going on today. I think if we look around, that's what's happening. The eye people are clinging as hard as they can to that point of view aspect of life, and they feel it slipping away, and they're desperately trying to preserve it in some way. And the ear, the acoustic space is crawling in on us inexorably. That's the result. McLuhan did say that major changes in technology all but destroy the society in which they occur. And I think he's right, that what we call civilization is doomed. And I don't think of that necessarily as a horrible thing, because I think what will result from that will be also human beings, probably not much different from now, just somewhat different content.
But isn't that like turning a breakdown into a breakthrough? I mean, that's when I think that's what Marshall learned from the wake, is that you fall down, then you get back up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's the interim that is difficult, and that's where we are. Okay? Many people still clinging to that world of the eye, that separation from the object of our vision, and it's uncomfortable to them to sort of come into the world of the ear and be involved in it all. And it's a difficult time. I think a lot of the kind of crap that I see going on now is that, and
Yeah.
it will pass in time. I don't know how long. I have no idea. It could be 100 years, could be many more, but we will get through it. Hard to tell what form the future will take.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of Joyce saying mistakes are to the portals of discovery, or,
Yeah, yeah,
Zappa said it well. He said, don't stop and keep going, this
yeah,
perseverance.
yeah,
But it's also back to Marshall saying the gap is where the action is,
yeah,
that
yeah,
resonating interval.
yeah.
Thornton Wilder, who was a Wakean, have you ever read that book of all of Thornton Wilder's letters about the wake?
No, I haven't. Is that
Yeah.
available still?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like this thick. Well, Skin of Our Teeth is a total Wakean play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, check it out a little. It's very interesting how huge Thornton Wilder was into the wake, into Joyce. His quote goes like this: art is confession, art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Hmm.
Link, you've laid your cards on the table for all 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this.
Mhm.
What's it really all about for you?
Well, I want to say I think. I don't think that's not it. My understanding is that we live in a situation that is in a constant form of change. There's nothing stable in anything, and there's nothing that's our doing. This is all happening on the scale of existence.
Yeah,
Universe means undivided turning. That's the meaning of that word, and that's where we are. So there's we have to accept. I think we have to
yeah,
accept their life. People are all given different things. Some of it seems
yeah,
horrible to us. It seems very kind of cold and calculating to say that's just the way things are, that people should be poor and starving and cold and brutalized and all of that. And that's all true. Uh, and sometimes we can do something about that. Most of all, we can't. We watch on TV, think
yeah,
tisk tisk, isn't that awful? Nothing we can do about it, really. It's the universe. That's what happens.
yeah,
Things are born, they suffer, they die.
yeah. Yeah, I talking to my friend once, and he said something like in a half sentence. And I goes, yeah, Americans speak in half sentences.
Hmm.
And he goes, deal with it.
Yeah. I,
you
I,
know, go ahead.
uh,
Yeah.
I bought a book many years ago that was the Diamond Sutra,
Yeah.
Gautama Buddha. And I read that book and I read that book and I read that book. And, I kept thinking there was going to be something there that I could understand, and I couldn't. And finally, I met a person that could explain that book to me. And that's what gave me my sense now of existence.
Wow. You mean they put it in terms that spoken word?
Yeah, I mean, it's all there, it
Yeah,
just, you look at those words and you think you know what they mean. So,
yeah,
you interpret it in your own life. And you have to somehow get out of that and see them from a different perspective, which I was fortunate, I think, to be able to experience. So,
yeah. It's been truly enlightening. I got a couple more and we're out of here, Link. What a pleasure. How has reading The Wake shaped your behavior?
well, I don't trust words anymore, on their face. Uh, I I think I have a clearer kind of understanding of the miasma that we exist in. And I believe in art, I think, because of Joyce.
Wow, you believe in art. That's beautiful. Yeah, I love McLuhan saying the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Yeah. McLuhan's a
But
great,
then
McLuhan is a great source
he's
of aphorisms, isn't he? Has a,
he is well, Bill Coon's a guy in Toronto, I think, or somewhere in Canada. He's writing like this book this thick of every great McLuhan aphorism by topic.
yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be a great Bible for us all.
It,
But the other one is when I told someone both Warhol and McLuhan said art is anything you can get away with. They
yeah.
said that sounds like Trump.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, Link. What gives you the most optimism?
It's just life, life, I think, is eternal.
Yeah,
It's, it's not always pleasant. It's not always fun, but it can be. Uh, and when those things occur, you just enjoy them and carry on. Kind of like kind of
yeah,
what Zappa said. Deal with it. Life is coming at us. We do what we can,
yep,
and it won't stop ever. I don't think. You know, I
yep,
I think the Big Bang is an illusion. That
yeah,
wasn't the start of anything. It
yeah.
it was perhaps the beginning of this particular reality, but certainly not the beginning of all. Joyce, yeah, well,
Well, that's funny because Captain Beefheart, one of Zappa's friends and co-creators,
mhm,
they were both sort of at the end of their life, and they watched a PBS documentary, and it was about the Big Bang Theory.
mhm.
Frank asked Don, he says, "What do you think came before the Big Bang?" And he goes, "The big."
He played once in Winnipeg, Captain Beefheart.
Do you see it?
Yeah, he was terrific.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, what you said was really good because also Louis Buñuel said, "Long live the living."
yeah, yeah.
but
Here we are.
but Link, the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich says the best thing for a human being is another human being. In the last question is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. What gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure sharing this time with another person. I loved yours, proper nutrition, because it applies to everybody. That's that universality, that
Yeah.
inclusivity is something I strive to recognize. And
Well,
you know,
thank you very much for this, Jerry. I think it's a wonder what you do. You're a unique presentation. So thank you.
thank you, Link. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope we can keep talking forever and ever, eternity.